Hey Lumineers, welcome back. Today we're breaking down the Sapphire Steel deck, one that's gaining popularity since Whispers in the Wild set came out. In this video, I will walk you through every stage of playing this deck, from your early game options to the exact card you need to win, which card you should mulligan at the start of your game, and of course, this deck's strengths and weaknesses. This deck revolves around ramping your ink quickly so you can play big threats early. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to play this deck and why so many people choose to play Sapphire Steel in the current meta. Let's start with our early game. In Sapphire Steel, we're fully focused on setting up the 2-4-6 rule. This means we're ramping early so that on turn 4, we can play our first big threat. And by turn 6, we're playing something that helps lock in our win. With that plan in mind, we're playing the following cards in our early game: Develop Your Brain, Captain Hook, Tipo, Vision of the Future, Still the Asteroid Sea, Ink Runner, Kita, and Cinderella. Develop Your Brain is your only turn 1 play besides Captain Hook. When you play it, you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your hand and the other on the bottom of your deck. This card is helpful when your opening hand isn't good. It helps you find missing ramp pieces like Tipo or Still the Asteroid Sea. Captain Hook is another turn 1 play, and you mainly use him against decks that want to go wide early. Thanks to Challenger +2, he can take out most early characters in a single challenge. Even if Hook never actually challenges, just having him on the board often discourages your opponent from exerting their character's quest. Tipo is one of the most important cards in the early game and really kicks off your 2-4-6 plan. When you play Tipo, you may put a card from your hand into your inkwell exerted. This does 2 things at once. It ramps your inkwell and lets you get rid of uninkable cards that would otherwise have slowed you down. Just like Develop Your Brain, Vision of the Future helps you find the missing card you're missing. When you play it, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Put one into your hand and place the rest on the bottom in any order. This card is great when your opening hand is weak or when you're missing a specific card for the early or mid game. Still the Asteroid Sea is all about growing your inkwell. When you play it, you draw a card and then you may put an additional card from your hand into your inkwell. This card helps you ramp while keeping your hand full and brings you closer to your turn 4 and turn 6 plays without losing tempo. When you play Ink Runner, you draw a card. We only run 2 copies because he's only valuable against heavy evasive decks like Amethyst Ruby. His ability lets you pay 1 ink to exert him and give a chosen character alert for the turn, which can help remove evasive threats. Kita provides both selection and ramp. You can exert her to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your inkwell, and leave the other on top of your deck. That means you're ramping, but you also know exactly what you're drawing next turn, which lets you plan your turns more efficiently. On top of that, Kita has wards, so she can not be targeted by actions. In most cases, your opponent has to challenge her to remove her, and with 3 strength and 3 willpower, Kita can force bad trades. Cinderella is an excellent turn 3 play in this deck, because at the end of each turn, if you have played a princess character that turn, you may put a card from your hand into your inkwell face down to draw a card. That means the turn Cinderella comes down, you immediately ramp 1 extra ink while refilling your hand at the same time. Plus, she helps you get rid of cards you don't need, including uninkables. So in an ideal opening, we would play Develop Your Brain or Captain Hook on turn 1. Unless we need to ink our 1-drop, in which case we simply play nothing. On turn 2, we want to play Tipo or Still the Asteroid Sea to put our first extra card into the inkwell. Then on turn 3, we play Cinderella, allowing us to add yet another card to the inkwell at the end of the turn. That means by the end of turn 3, we're sitting at 5 ink, which sets us up for our mid game and that important turn 4 power play. Your goal in the early game is to stick to this plan unless you absolutely have to interact to avoid losing the game. In most matchups, Sapphire Steel is about ramping first, trusting your mid-game to stabilize the board, and then letting your big threats take over from there. Now, let's talk about what we need to do after we've played our first 3 turns, because this is where Sapphire Steel really starts to take control of the game. If our early game went according to plan, we now have an ink advantage, and that will allow us to start putting real pressure on the board. The mid-game plan is simple. Use our early ramp to play big threats early, control the board through challenges and removal, and start converting that board control into lore. The key cards we're looking at in the mid-game are Goliath, Namari, Tinkerbell, Pluto, and he hurled his Thunderbolt. Goliath is your ideal turn 4 play, and one of the main reasons this deck is following the 2-4-6 rule in the first place. With 6 strength and 5 willpower, Goliath immediately demands an answer. Most decks simply aren't ready to deal with a character this size on turn 4. On top of that, he quests for 2 lore, which means he applies pressure even if your opponent doesn't interact with him. Goliath also brings an ability that can completely shut down card advantage strategies, which is especially helpful against Amethyst decks. At the end of each player's turn, if they have more than 2 cards in hand, they choose and discard until they're down to 2. If they have fewer than 2 cards, they draw until they have 2. This keeps both players low on resources. The only downside is that if you have 3 or more cards in hand, Goliath can't ready, so managing your hand size becomes very important. Namari is one of your strongest follow-up plays and works extremely well alongside Goliath. She gets +1 strength for each card in your discard, which means the longer the game goes on, the stronger she becomes. Goliath helps with filling your discard pile, so the 2 cards work very well together. On top of that, when Namari enters play and at the start of your turn, you may draw a card and then discard a card. This not only helps you find what you need, but is also boosting her strength even further. With 5 willpower, she can take hits, making her a very reliable mid-game threat. Tinkerbell is strong against decks that want to go wide. When you play her, she deals 1 damage to each opposing character. Then, during your turn, whenever she banishes another character in a challenge, you may deal 2 damage to a chosen opposing character. This makes Tinkerbell excellent at cleaning up multiple characters in 1 turn. With 5 willpower and 2 lore, Pluto is already a good character on his own. But his real power comes from his abilities. During your turn, whenever one of your other steel characters banishes a character in a challenge, you gain 2 lore. That means every successful challenge from Goliath, Namari, or Tinkerbell starts turning directly into progress towards winning the game. On top of that, whenever you play another steel character, you may banish a chosen item. This makes Pluto extremely strong against decks that rely on items like Emerald Chromagon. While most of your mid-game control comes from challenges, He Hurl His Thunderbolt is a reliable song removal. It deals 4 damage to a chosen character, which is often exactly what you need to answer a threat immediately, especially for characters your opponent doesn't want to exert. So in summary, the mid-game is all about turning your ink advantage into board control, and then turning that board control into lore. Ideally, you're playing Goliath on turn 4 and then backing him up with Namari, Tinkerbell, or Pluto over the following turns. From there, every successful challenge pushes you further ahead and forces your opponent to react to you. Now, let's move into the late game because this is where we're going to secure the win. By the time we reach the late game, we're usually ahead on ink and we've already stabilized the board. From here, the goal shifts slightly. Instead of just controlling the board, we want to secure the win and remove anything that could swing it back in our opponent's favor. The key cards we're looking at in the late game are Hades, Vincenzo, Arthur, the Headless Horseman, and Beyond the Horizon. Hades is one of your most important late game characters and often a card that lets you stay on top. When you play Hades, you may put a chosen opposing character into their player's ink while face down. This is perfect when your opponent tries to answer your big threats, and it's an immediate no, thank you, bye. With 6 willpower, he's also difficult to remove, and with 2 lore, he helps close the game quickly. Vincenzo is another way to shut down your opponent's answer. When they play a character, you can immediately respond with Vincenzo to deal 3 damage. On top of that, with 8 willpower and 3 lore, Vincenzo is incredibly hard to remove. Against decks that don't run cards like Dragonfire or Hades, he can almost single-handedly lock in the win. Arthur plays a key role in mirror matches. When he enters play, a chosen character gains Challenger +2 and Resist +2, and can challenge ready characters. In games where both players have large, powerful boards, this ability can completely swing the game. The Headless Horseman is at his best when you already control the game. When you play him, each player draws 3 cards and then discards 3 cards at random. This often completely disrupts your opponent's comeback plan. On top of that, for each action card discarded this way, you get to deal 2 damage to opposing characters, making this card a true final nail in the coffin once you're already ahead. Finally, Beyond the Horizon is your late game card draw engine. By the time you're casting this, you usually have plenty of ink to work with, and it allows you to find exactly what you need to finish the game with. Whether that's another threat, removal, or a follow-up play, Beyond the Horizon ensures you don't run out of gas, while also disrupting your opponent by forcing them to discard their hands. So in the late game, the plan is very clear. We use our ink advantage and characters like Hades to remove threats, while Beyond the Horizon keeps our hand full of answers. The longer the game goes on, the more comfortable this deck becomes. You have the tools to outvalue your opponents, answer everything they throw at you, and eventually overwhelm them with options they can't keep up with. Now that you know which cards are in this deck and when they are played, we need to look at the strategy on how you should be playing this deck against different opponents. At its core, Sapphire Steel is a ramp control deck built around the 2-4-6 rule. Our goal is simple: Tipo or Sail the Asteroid Sea on turn 2, Cinderella on turn 3, Goliath on turn 4, late game character on turn 6. However, this deck doesn't try to win fast. Instead, it aims to win by putting the opponent in a position where they simply don't have an answer anymore to get back. However, some decks require you to tweak that strategy a bit. Against fast, white decks like Sea Dogs and Ember Steel, your goal is not to fall too far behind. Captain Hook becomes very important here, since he discourages early questing and helps you remove characters. These decks require you to interact earlier than usual, even if it slightly delays your ramp. Your late game is stronger, but you need to get there first before the game is over. Tinkerbell and He Hurled His Thunderbolt are very important to stabilize this game. Against Amethyst Steel decks, we want to make sure we keep denying them resources. You would follow your normal ramp plan since the deck doesn't have answers to your late game. Plus, most of them focus on setting up their turn 4 Genie and Strength of a Raging Fire, which buys you time. But along the way, you want to focus on plays like Goliath, the Headless Horseman, and Beyond the Horizon to remove their card advantage. Also try to get Ink Runner on the board to be able to remove threats like Elsa, Dumbo, Iago, and Genie. In mirror matches, it is important to focus on getting Arthur. He can help you win the mirror match by forcing your characters to exert, and by adding Challenger and Resist +2, he lets your character live while you remove your opponent's board. Since they can easily play Hades to remove your characters immediately, it is important to have multiple threats on the board and keep the pressure going. Against Ruby Amethyst, you want to make sure you're playing Namari and Vincenzo at the right time. You don't want to lose those characters to the Headless Horseman. Plus, this deck plays a lot of evasive, which means we need to focus on getting Ink Runner soon. Without Ink Runner, you might have a hard time removing their board. Plus, we want to make sure we keep denying them resources, since with characters like Dumbo and Genie, they have a lot of card draw. Pluripool is a bit of a harder matchup since they have good late game options. Damage moving exert options with Elsa, and bounce with Madame Mim, and card draw. You want to ramp up and deny them card advantage and deal with threats that can be bounced and repeat effects. We don't want Elsa to exert our characters twice or being put in the inkwell by Hades. Plus, you need Ink Runner to deal with some of those evasive characters. Also, Sapphire Emerald can be a more difficult match since they have good answers in the late game as well. We want to focus on ramping and be on the lookout for the combo Malicious, Mean, and Scary plus Prince Philip that could wipe out our board. Always have backup answers and make sure you can come back with those options. But keep in mind that Mother Knows Best and You're Welcome can be played to remove fresh new characters on the board. At the same time, you also want to focus on removing their card engine, Clarabelle, and denying them card advantage in general by playing cards like Goliath. In general, Sapphire Steel is designed to look a little bit slow at first, but once the engine is running, it becomes incredibly hard to stop. Alright, let's talk about Mulligans. A strong opening hand can make all the difference. I will walk through 3 hands and share what I would keep. We've got Namari, Develop Your Brain, Cinderella, Vincenzo, Another Develop Your Brain, and Tipo. This hand is actually pretty good. We have Tipo and Cinderella for ramp, and our turn 4 Goliath is on track. I would mulligan 1 Develop Your Brain to try to draw something like Captain Hook, Pluto, or Tinkerbell. That said, it's also fine to keep the full hand and just ink Develop Your Brain on turn 1. Here we have Cinderella, Namari, the Headless Horseman, Tinkerbell, Another Headless Horseman, and Namari. This hand is pretty bad, since we're missing key ramp cards like Tipo and Seal the Asteroid Sea. I would keep Cinderella and mulligan the rest to try and find our ramp options. We've got Develop Your Brain. He hurled his Thunderbolt, Vincenzo. Another he hurled his Thunderbolt, the Headless Horseman, Cinderella, and Beyond the Horizon. In this hand, I would keep Develop Your Brain and Cinderella. Develop Your Brain is useful as an inkable or as a backup if our opening hand doesn't improve, since it gives us another chance to draw a ramp card like Tipo or Seal the Asteroid Sea. I would mulligan the rest in hopes of finding those. Now that we've gone through every stage of the game, let's break down what Sapphire does really well and where it can struggle. One of the biggest strengths of this deck is ramp. By following the 2-4-6 rule, you're often able to play Goliath on turn 4, followed by Namari, Tinkerbell, or Pluto to control the board. Something that's hard for opponents to deal with. Another major advantage is board control and removal options. Cards like He Hurled His Thunderbolt, Tinkerbell, Vincenzo, and Hades allow you to remove almost any key threats, while Pluto converts removal into lore. Sapphire Steel is also very effective against decks that rely on card advantage, which is one of the reasons so many players are running some form of Amethyst deck in this meta. Goliath and Pluto help disrupt their plans, while Namari grows stronger the longer the game goes on. And because you have so many mid and late game threats, the deck wins in the long haul. Of course, no deck is perfect. One of the main weaknesses of Sapphire Steel is its reliance on ramp. If your early game is disrupted or you fall behind on ink, your mid game can be delayed and snowball into a loss. The deck can also struggle against extremely evasive decks, which is why Ink Runner is a key card in certain matchups, but it isn't always enough on its own. Finally, because this deck has big powerful threats, it can sometimes be vulnerable to aggressive decks, since it doesn't have many answers in the early game. And that's everything you need to know about Sapphire Steel. Here is the full deck list. You will notice we run a lot of late game characters and ramp options. This deck might not be the fastest way to win a game, but it's definitely one of the most rewarding one. Sapphire Steel has a few different versions in the meta, and if you want to experiment, there are several options to consider. For example, you could swap out Ink Runner for Jasmine, Fearless Princess, who becomes evasive during your turn and can buff herself with Challenger +3 by discarding a card, which also helps Namari. Other options include adding Lexington to deal with evasive decks, Doc instead of Beyond the Horizon for card draw, Pleakley instead of Kita, or Spooky Side to handle decks like Ember Steel or Sea Dogs. In the end, they're all solid options. It really comes down to your personal playstyle and what's popular in your local area. If you want to try this deck yourself, you can find the full list on Dreamborn. Just scan the QR code on the screen or check the link in the description. And that's it. If you enjoyed this guide, hit the like button and subscribe for more Lorcana content. And let me know in the comments which deck you're playing currently and which deck you would like to see next. Until next time, bye!